Hello everyone, you're welcome back to Volmage Fit. Here we learn tips, tricks and techniques of making beautiful and amazing outfits. So today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to cut and stitch an armhole Princess Dart Bustier. So guys, if this is your first time on my channel Volmage Fit, do not forget to hit on the subscribe button and click on the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. So now let's get straight into the tutorial. Here I folded my fabric in two to cut my half length, and I used the highest measurement of my top bodice, which is my round bust measurement. So what I'm doing here is taking my shoulder to my waistline, which is my shoulder to my half length, and I'll be using 17 inches for it. So I've marked out the 17 inches and I've also marked out the top, which will be my start line and also my shoulder line. So I'll mark same measurement here so that I would have a straight line. So I'm going to go ahead to rule it out. So I'm ruling out my start line, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to start taking in my measurement, which is my bust point, my under bust point, and here I already have my half length marked. So what I'm going to do next, the next point I'm going to make is my chest line. So I'm going to mark out my chest line, which is 8.5 inches for me, and then I'll take same measurements this way as I do usually to have a straight line, because I want to make sure the measurement points are correct. So I'm going to rule these lines connecting to each other. I'm going to rule them out one after the other. Please guys, make sure you pay attention to this very part we're about to start. So I have my shoulder line, my chest line, my bust point, my under bust point, and then my half length, while the extreme end is my allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do is to take my shoulder measurement divided by 2, and after that I'll add half an inch for my seam allowance. Then I'll come down to my chest line to take same measurement, that is my shoulder measurement divided by 2. I did that to have a straight line from my shoulder line to my chest line. Then connect these 2 points together. Now that line will be for my armhole. So the next thing I'm going to do is to come down by 1 inch from my original shoulder measurement. What I'm marking here is my shoulder slope, because guys, you know our shoulders are not upright straight but sloped. So here I'll take my neckline width measurement, and I used 3.5 inches. So I'll connect from the shoulder slope to that 3.5 inches. Now that I have that marked out, I'll start to take my in measurement. So I'll start with my dart measurement, which is my nipple to nipple measurement. Remember, I am cutting directly on my fabric, so all seam allowances will be included in this measurement. So for my nipple to nipple measurement is 4 inches, but because I'm adding my seam allowance, I'm using 4.5 inches. So I'll take same 4.5 inches from my nipple point down to my waistline. Then I'll connect these points together to form a straight line, which will be my dart line. The next thing I'm going to do is to take my armhole curve. So from my shoulder slope point, I'll take it down to my chest line and divide it by 2, get the middle point, put the mark down, and then go in by 0.75 inch. So I'll take that and put the point down, and then connect from my shoulder line with a straight line, and then curve it into the armhole or into the chest line. So guys, make sure you follow this process closely. So from here, I'm going to take 5 inches downwards from my shoulder line to my armhole curve, and I'll be connecting my nipple to nipple dart line to that 5 inches point. So I'll use a curve line, a slight curve line, to connect these points together. You can see my bust point measuring 4.5 inches on fold, that is 9 inches when opened up, means after stitching I would have 8 inches left. So here I'm going to take my under bust tightening and then measure out 2 inches away from my center front dart line. For my armhole, to tighten my armhole, I'll come down from this point by 1.2 inches. I'll connect from my under bust to my bust point, and then to that 1.2 inches point I made. To start with, I'll connect my under bust to my waistline or to my half length. The next thing is to connect from my under bust to my bust point with a curve line. This is to form my bust cup, and then from that point, from my bust point, I would connect to the 1.2 inches point I made on the armhole. So this is forming my bust cup already, as you can see. So I have my under bust tightening and my armhole tightening. So here I'm going to take my bust measurement divided by 4. I'll make a point there. So sorry guys if you can't get the chalk point clearly because of the white pattern on my fabric, but just know that is my bust point divided by 4. So here I measured the gap in between these two dart lines, which is 2 inches, and I included it in my waist measurement, which is divided by 4 also. If you don't include the measurement in between the dart lines, your waist and your under bust measurement is going to come out small, means your dress is not going to fit well. Now on my chest line, I'll take my bust measurement here too, divided by 4. Now from here, I'll start to include my side seam allowance of 2.5 inches. This is because I am cutting directly on my main fabric, so all seam allowances are included here, which has my seam allowance to stitch the bust cup to my center front. So back to my chest line, I would include that 1.2 inches measurement from my armhole. So after stitching these points together, my bust measurement will not reduce. So I'll connect these points together from my chest line to my half length. Now that we are done with all that, I'll separate my center front from my side front. I'll just take my scissors to cut through, separating these two pieces from each other. So guys, I want you to take note of this. Make sure to notch your under bust line. Just give it a little notch at the end point with your scissors, because when stitching these both pieces together, it is going to come out really helpful for you. So now I have my front pattern set, but not fully set though, because I have not cut out my neckline. I'll take this away to cut out my back pattern, and I'll be using my center front to cut out the back pattern. Anyways guys, this back does not have plenty wahala, so I'll just use my chalk to trace out this curved part, and then here is my zipper allowance of about 2 inches. Here there's something I usually like to do, that is adding 1 inch to my back shoulder line. I do this so that the front shoulder line will not be dragging to the back after stitching. Now I'm going to use the side front armhole to trace out the side back armhole and then the side seam. So after doing that, I'm just going to cut out this piece, divide them in two because it is almost set. The next thing here for me, remember I have not cut out the front neckline, so I'm going to come down by 7 inches for the length, and after stitching I would have 7.5 inches. So for the width, I already have it marked out, which is 3.5 inches. So I'm going to connect these points together. You can either use a straight line or a curved line depending on the style line you are trying to achieve for your neckline. So for the back neckline, I'm going to rule out where my front shoulder stops, and then from there I'll come down by 2 inches and then connect it back to the shoulder line. So guys, you can go ahead to follow all these steps. So for my center back, I went up by about 2 inches, which is my center back half length. For my side front pattern, I went up by about 1.5 inches, connecting it back to the dart line. Please take note, even after these front and back alterations, I still have my lower seam allowance. I actually put that much seam allowance on the lower part so that I don't short of any allowance after stitching. So for my front neckline, I decided to make it a slight curved V neckline, not a straight V neckline. So I'll just connect my shoulder line to this point and then trim it out. So I have my front and my back pattern set. So guys, please be patient enough for me to go fuse this with interface and bring it back to show you. So I have gone ahead to fuse with interface and also cut out my lining for my top. So I fused my main fabric and my lining with interface, but I fused with different interfaces. So this is my lining and here is my main fabric. For my main fabric, I used wadding as my interface, and some persons will call this a light breast pad. So this is what I used for my main fabric, and it's thicker than what I used for my lining. My lining, I made use of a cotton hairstay. So this is how it looks like. It is really light and soft. Let me bring this up close so you can see it very well. And yes, I did same thing for the other parts of these fabrics. Now let's head to the next part, which is the stitching together of all these pieces. So this is how I'm going to stitch my side front to my center front, by first stitching from my under bust to my waistline before stitching the bust cup to the center front. Alright guys, let's head down to my sewing machine. Please make sure you take note of how I am placing my side front on my center front. So you see how I did that. Now I'm going to start stitching. So once I get to the under bust, which is the notched point like I said earlier, I'm going to stop and tilt my fabric a bit, then continue to sew in the curved part. So you can see how I'm placing my side front, which is the bust cup, into the center front. And guys, when sewing this part, please do not rush, just take it gently and easily. So you can see how I'm placing it gently and making sure they are on same line. So I have the first side front sewn in, and this is how it looks like. Even without ironing yet, you can see how curved and beautiful it is looking. So in case you didn't get this part very well, don't worry, I'm going to sew in the second side so you can see it very well. So just pay close attention to this. Now I'm going to start stitching from my waistline. I'll place it this way, start stitching, and when I get to the under bust, I'll take up my presser foot, leaving my needle still in the fabric. Tilt it this way, just like I said earlier, then put down my presser foot and continue to stitch with just half of an inch. So when stitching this part, make sure you stitch with the exact allowance you measured while cutting. If not, your nipple to nipple measurement is not going to be accurate. It will either be too small or too wide. So make sure you stitch with the exact half-inch measurement you cut out for it. So I have sewn in the two side front, and this is how my armhole Princess Dart Bustier looks like. It's looking really fine. You can see that. So I'm going to go ahead to press open my seam lines, and this is how it looks like on the inside, looking really neat and nice. So guys, make sure to notch open your seam allowance to give this part some ease. You can see how I am notching it open, and I'm going to go ahead to press it with my pressing iron. So just to give this front part a little more glance, you can see how it's standing out, looking well cupped. Trust me guys, this can only be achieved if you cut your fabric with the right measurements. So guys, let's move to the next part, which is stitching the back piece together. Now I have the side back and the center back here. So watch closely how I am going to stitch this. This is just a normal princess dart. That is what I cut for the back, a normal princess dart with no waist or under bust tightening. You can see how I am placing the two pieces together. I am stitching and adjusting my side back on my center back. So guys, I am done with the first one, and this is how it looks like on the front part. You can see how flat it came out. This is before pressing with my pressing iron, so you can see how flat it came out, looking really nice and neat. And here is the second side of the back piece. So you see how I placed it in case you missed out on the first part. One thing you should take note of is how I started my stitching, which is from the waistline and then stitch it down to the armhole. I did just the same thing for the front piece, just the way I'm doing for the back piece. I did exactly the same thing. That is the best way and the most accurate way you can stitch together these two pieces to get a very fine outcome. Okay guys, I'm done with stitching my front and my back darts together. So this is the last piece for the back. So you can see how it looks like inside, looking really neat and beautiful. So what I'm going to do here is to take to my pressing table and press open my seam lines. And here, this is what I have after using my pressing iron. This is one part of the back piece, so I'm just going to trim off this excess, and this is the front piece of my top. I have also gone ahead to open up my seam lines with my pressing iron. Now I'm just going to trim off that excess because I won't be needing that, and I still have some excesses on the lower part which I'll be trimming off later on. Alright guys, we're done with this very beautiful and detailed tutorial on how to cut and stitch an armhole Princess Dart Bustier. Please, if you find this video, this tutorial very helpful, do not forget to give it a thumbs up. Just click on that button and also drop your comments on the comment section. Please, if this is your first time on my channel, do not forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell to get more detailed tutorials like this. If you'd like to watch a detailed tutorial on how I made this very beautiful dress, then be sure to click on your notification bell. That is the bell button up there, so you get the notification whenever this video drops. So from here, I'll see you in my next video. Bye.